I'd like to open to the panel to really comment on what does diversity and inclusion really mean for you? How do you understand that word? We mentioned earlier it's way beyond gender. Most people think of it as gender. But what do you really think about that? I'll start with Maciej first.
Thanks, Zach. Well, fact is, we indeed usually associate diversity and inclusion with gender, but we are talking also about race, nationality, and disabilities. The way I started thinking about diversity and inclusion recently is that it goes far beyond the companies in which we operate in, because diversity and inclusion is pretty much the same to us, and most of the companies in which we work in have some types of diversity and inclusion programs. And the benefits of those reach far beyond just the benefits of the companies, which we usually like to portray in dollar terms, like how much less money we need to pay to Teflon. But on the other side, we impact with the same values 250,000 people in Poland, multiple million people all around the world, regardless of the governments under which we operate in. So no matter how far the right wing or left wing or whatever nationalistic moves we see going all across the globe right now, or populist moves, the values which we teach to those people are universal, very unique, and in my opinion the right way to go forward. So diversity and inclusion to me is much more than just the dollar number of contributions which we pay to the government.
Okay. Thank you very much. Katrien?
Yeah. Well, I'm a stickler for definitions. I think it's always very important to make sure that you speak the language. And I find these words, diversity, inclusion, they get thrown about. Everybody uses them, but in different ways. So from my perspective, I think for me, diversity is actually everything that makes us unique and individual. It can be visible, the things that make us visibly different are the colour of our skin, our gender, etc. And then loads of things that we don't see. The ladies just now in the presentation before spoke about the fact that 60% of disabilities are not visible. That's also something that makes us different, but that we're not necessarily aware of. So diversity is what makes us different and unique. Inclusion, which is a concept that for me goes hand in hand with diversity, is feeling that you belong, that difference, the fact that you're different, that each one of us is different, is a good thing, and that you're respected and valued for that. And then if you link it to a workplace perspective, for me, diversity is linked to representation. It's counting the numbers. How many men do you have? How many women do you have? How many Polish employees do you have? How many employees do you have from the US, from the UK, etc.? So diversity, numbers, representation, inclusion, which for me is really key in this whole story, is, well, what is your culture like? What is your environment like? Do people feel that they belong, that they can be themselves, or do they feel they have to fit in a mold, even if they may look differently to the standard? And I actually like a better way of saying it, actually, is a big diversity advocate, Verna Myers. You may have heard of her. She's a US gender diversity advocate, has phrased it in a really nice way. And she says, diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. And that, for me, sums it up nicely.
That's actually a very good way to actually conclude this point, because diversity is on lots of agendas. We've seen that many years, and that's where the data is, let's say, useful but can be misleading sometimes. Having the people in the room doesn't necessarily mean they feel engaged or are contributing. Therefore, the I bit of D is such an important addition that many companies have been doing over the years, and inclusion is very key. What my company has done in this area is around unconscious bias, which is often trying to get people more involved. But that's very useful. Thank you. So, Karolina, last but not least.
Okay, I look at it from two different perspectives. So one is society perspective. Diversity is a fact. We are different. So we are diverse as a society. From the organization perspective is how to bring this diversity to the organization. And it, to a certain extent, is the result of what we do. The result of the culture that we create, the result of the inclusiveness that we present to the outside world, that helps us to bring in different people, and by different I mean the same as you, Katrien. It's not necessarily only obvious, like gender or race or ethnic background. It's much more. It's the way people express themselves. It's the way people different from each other. And how much of that we can bring to the organization. Because organizations, to a certain extent, are like organisms. And we all know that the more genetic diversity, the healthier organism is. It's similar with the organizations. The more diversity, the healthier we are, and the less risk we have of getting unified and repeating the same mistakes. So diversity is a fact, and it's a result of our actions in the organization. Inclusion is what we do to bring people with different backgrounds to the organization, how we behave.
Thank you. So now I'm going to make it difficult for all three of you. And this is where I hope the audience starts making notes, because what I'd like to hear is what kinds of things you've actually done to make it happen. Because we talk about this, we've been talking about it for years. I've been involved in this stuff for more than 10 years. Everyone talks about it. But actually, how do you make change happen? And I'll start by telling you what I've done, so it makes it easier. It gives you time to think, actually. So what my company's done is we've done three things. One is we created a data analytics team in Krakow that mine the HR data in every shape or form. So we've correlated, for example, when we create promotion long lists and someone doesn't get promoted, the likelihood that person leaves is phenomenal. For example, so we've mined all the data. Then what we've done is we've published the data to our employees. So we go board -2, which is my level. We all get our diversity dashboard online. It's a Tableau report. I can flip it inside out and see my diversity stats in all shape or form: age, sex, and race. Unfortunately, no more, just those three, but it's a start. So we have the data. And then what we've done is we've got loads of programs to see which levers we pull and what does it do to the data. So we've actually tried to do things to make it work. It's only 1 year old, so we don't know whether it's going to impact it yet. But we've actually implemented these programs. So now we'll start with you first, Karolina. What have you seen, because you also support clients,
yes.
What have you seen that actually really works and moves the needle?
Actually, this is really interesting because, as you can see over there, I'm responsible for the EMEA region, and EMEA region in my case is mostly Europe. E is aspirational, but in EMEA means very different countries, from UK through Netherlands, France to Poland. And there are a little bit different approaches in different countries. But indeed, I would start with measuring where we are. So this is what we are doing. We are gathering data. In different countries, slightly different set of data. But we also gather data, for example, around the sexual preference. And people always ask me, how do you get this data? Because you shouldn't ask, because it shouldn't be the case. We do anonymous survey when people are onboarded, and they have a choice whether they would like to answer or not. So that way we also know if from sexual minorities perspective we are inclusive enough or not. So I would start with gathering data. Second thing is awareness, and companies in general, so it's not only us but also clients, they raise awareness by training, and I can't stress enough how important it is. It's actually the most important tool that we have. I would like to quickly refer to sociobiological ground for exclusion, actually. We all have this reptile part of brain that is tuned to scan for danger. And when we see something different, we tend to interpret it as danger before we even start thinking with our cortex part of the brain. So the only way to make this emotional reaction stop is to engage cortex. And to engage cortex, people need knowledge. And it's not only knowledge about disabilities, that someone with depression, as we just saw on the movie, will not kill himself because he just saw the paper knife. But it's also self-awareness about unconscious biases and how stereotypes that we all have transform into biases and how they transform into actions that we are not even aware of. So training is something that helps us to control it and to stimulate our cortex. And the third thing is role modeling. And just to give you an example, in Netherlands there is a gay pride parade. I'm referring a lot to the sexual minorities because I have in my team my colleague. He's an active gay rights activist, so I kind of talk about it a lot with him. So it's close to my heart. So we, as a company, we sponsored a platform, a SHIP, when we show that we do support gay rights movement. That's about role modeling. We also support our colleagues who are married to the same gender when they go abroad, and we support them strongly so they land well in the new cultures and societies. And last but not least, it's peer support. And again, to give you an example, we have a shared service center in Hyderabad, and most of our employees are female, young female. The difficulty starts when they get married because they experience a lot of pressure at home, cultural pressure to stop working and to come back and take care of their husbands' families, etc., etc. So we established a mentoring program for them where women from US and from Europe, they have one-to-one mentoring discussions with those who really want to stay and want to develop their career, to give them not only moral but also practical support how to deal with that kind of difficulties. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's a good one.
I could go on forever. So.
Okay, some concrete examples. Very good. Thank you. Katrina.
I see four things. It would be positioning, data, people, and processes. Positioning, what I mean by that is, and I think this is a case in point, the moment you start talking about diversity and inclusion, people think it's a side thing. You know, we noticed that with the audience. There's been, of course, there's a wealth of topics here, so it's normal that people need to choose. But instinctively, a lot of people still think, this diversity thing, it's a nice to have. You know, we'll do it when we have time. Once it's positioned like that, it's very difficult to get rid of that perception and to actually make progress. So one key thing I find with us at Euroclear, at least that work, is put it on the strategic agenda. Make sure it's embedded in what you're trying to do and achieve as a company. And for us, it's really about being innovative, coming up with creative solutions in different areas, and secondly, engaging and retaining our talent. And especially in Poland, where we have a very competitive market, where there's lots of opportunities for people, this is a key thing for us. So positioning. A second point, and Karolina already referred to it, data. Really, don't go anywhere without the data. Because there are lots of perceptions. At Euroclear, for example, and I guess it's the same in many of your companies, because there are more women graduating from university at the moment than men, typically you see a lot of women in the office, in junior, starting positions. And so a lot of times you get reactions like, but we don't have there's nothing to do about diversity. We have a woman and we have a guy with a black collar, so we're sorted. So get your data out and be very, very strategic in your choices. Is there an issue in getting people with different backgrounds in? Is it a matter of, developing and promoting them where you have an issue? Are you losing certain parts of your talent pool? So really use the data. And if I can make some publicity for the previous speaker, Robert Baker from Mercer. Mercer in particular have done a great job together with the EDGE certification group in Switzerland in providing tools and ways of making that data very visual and really using it as an eye-opener when you talk to your colleague, when you talk to your senior management to get this on the agenda. Positioning, data, people. One thing I've learned along the way, and we've only been in this journey for 3 years, is you need to practice what you preach. Which means including everybody, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of diversity. Yes, let's do something for the women, or let's do something for people with disabilities, or let's do something for people who are gay. No, this is about each one of us. This is about the full talent pool. And I think it's very important, and what I've learned is you need to meet people where they're at. don't assume things. Just keep repeating why you're doing it, what you're trying to get out of it, and how this will benefit the company as a whole. And then the last bit, the processes. I'm in HR, and I think what Robert said earlier was key. As HR professionals, we have a huge role to play in making sure that we also take a step back on all the processes that we facilitate in companies, like hiring, like promotion rounds, etc., in making sure that a concept that you were referring to, Karolina, unconscious biases don't get a chance to kick in. Because I agree with you, awareness is key, but there's only so much you can do with awareness. The whole thing about unconscious awareness, and I'm absolutely fascinated about this topic, so please go online and read about this if you're interested too. The whole thing about it, of course, is that it is unconscious. So even with our very best intentions, me as well, I can go into an interview room, interview 3 people and make a choice and be, very willing and have the best interest in mind and wanted to make the right choice. I also have my own biases. So whatever we can do in our processes, and there's loads of research these days, for example, from Irish Bonet, from Harvard Kennedy Business School, who's a really, very exciting researcher on the topic, shows that there are small things you can do, very small but powerful things, to make sure that you exclude biases from kicking in as much as possible. So for me, those are the 4 sort of success factors. Strategic positioning, getting your data right and getting it very visible, and publishing it even, like you said, Derek. 3, getting everybody involved, and 4, making sure that your processes are adapted to this willingness of moving forward.
May I throw just one example of a very small thing in the process that you can do to remove unconscious bias from Netherlands, removing address. Because apparently there are areas where people that are associated with negative stereotype leave. So removing address while presenting the CV to the hiring manager made a difference. Sorry for that, but no. I thought that it would...
And that's actually where your point, Karolina, came in. I really liked your point about local, how there are so many differences between different countries. In the Netherlands, it might be address. In other countries, it might be, a picture. In other countries, like the school in the UK, it's very often the school you've been to that can trigger certain, assumptions about your level of intelligence or your interest or your ambitions. So, yeah, but get yourself acquainted with these, and then there are very simple things you can do. I agree.
Let me just add to that point, because we all work in global organizations. Most of us run global teams. And actually training your line managers to operate globally and understanding the differences, because diversity is not just in my own team, it's around the world, and there are different flavors. I worked in Hyderabad, I ran a large team. I had a knock on the door one day, and someone came in, and an elderly gentleman, and he sat down in my office, and I thought, what does he want? And he was checking whether I was suitable for his daughter to be her employer. Now that's something that no one's ever trained me to do. This stuff happens in India, it doesn't happen here, or in London, or in Switzerland. So being open to those things is really very important. Let me just test one little thing with you, actually. So you work for a financial services company, you work for a bank, I work for a bank. When we saw the data, we were astonished how bad it was. At 2 levels below me, the male-female ratio is 50-50, and my level is 15%. The senior management wouldn't let us publish the data because they were scared to have a litigation. As in, if I was a female, I didn't get promoted, I would sue the bank because actually, clearly there's a bias stopping me. Have you experienced that at all? And have other companies had to deal with this topic? And maybe Maciej, you're a banker, have you come across this in your firm? Do you publish the data?
And he's in risk. So.
It's not necessarily a risk which my organization evaluates as its core business, but I'm afraid the stats for Credit Suisse are pretty much the same as in UBS, I would assume. We are aware of the data, at least, well, for sure we take a data cut for Poland, though we publish it so far only very carefully, highlighting to higher management, and also making sure, especially in terms of recruitment, our recruitment agencies, that certain data fields are eventually blanked out, not only when it comes to the perm employee basis, but also the contractors and consultants, where we try to tackle this issue somehow. But it requires lot of thinking and action in order to get it done right.
Thank you. And my advice, I mean, we took a year to get it published. My advice, because both of you said the importance of data, I'm also completely behind that. Just publish it and be damned. Just force your way through and publish the data. You will never change it otherwise.
Because at least you kick off a conversation.
Yes,
because indeed
exactly.
some people may think, oh, that's discrimination then. And then you can get into the whole conversation about diversity being a complex topic. So there's no one root cause and therefore no one solution, but engaging people in the conversation is key.
So now, Lee, just take a slightly different tone. So maybe very briefly you could say, what are the things you've seen done in your companies or with your contacts or clients that have not worked? So things that we should avoid trying because it's just failed, it made the situation even worse. Maybe I'll go back to you again, Maciej. Things you've seen that actually haven't helped, wasted lots of money, or actually did the opposite, made it even more difficult.
The lack of follow-up. Because sometimes the executives, they give the direction, we are supportive of diversity and inclusion. It's just a message, it's just an email which gets lost somewhere in the mailbox, but later on the follow-up is missing because we can say, well, what did we do in terms of diversity and inclusion? The mail was sent, but what does it actually mean to everyday life? So the trainings which you mentioned, being aware of the data, sharing the data, and living diversity and inclusion. It shouldn't just be an item on an agenda every now and then on the management committee, but it needs to be part of the DNA. It's part of the core business which we really need to live in. And if we don't follow up and really do this groundwork bottoms up and top down, then there is no way that we will ever overcome the difficulties which we're facing nowadays.
Okay. Katrien?
One thing I'd say is when you do events and you invite people and you look for an appropriate title and subject, again, be very intentional. What I mean by that is, specifically on the dimension of gender, I often get the question, Katrien, why don't we do training specifically for women? In other companies, they have specific training paths for women. Why don't we have that? And on the other hand, we once tried something which we called leadership lunches. And so we invited some of our senior role models, and particularly female role models, to host a lunch conversation with people in the organization to share their career track, lessons learned, etc. And so what I'm trying to say is, with that lunches, afterwards, a lot of people got the wrong idea, thought, okay, this is something for the women, and this is something, dedicated. And the thing I took out for that is, make it very clear what you're trying to do. We've always taken the stance at Euroclear, we don't do things for women particularly, or for men particularly. It should be open to all, because if you want to move the needle on this topic, it's about engaging everybody. Having said that, I've learned also that there might be certain occasions where it does make sense to have separate groups, separate genders on topics, but it's more about, peer-to-peer coaching, sharing things, and that can be different for men and for women. But be very clear on what you're trying to achieve, because what I've learned with the Lunch and Learn events was that a lot of men got the idea, which was exactly the opposite from what we were trying to achieve, that it was a women's thing.
Thank you. Karolina?
I would go even one step further, that what sometimes happens is an unintentional stigmatization of the group. Again, a little bit like on this movie with the potential employee with depression. So when you organize something only for one group, it gives understanding that it's not only for this group, but also this group is particularly weak. So this women needs to be fixed. They need extra attention. They need extra money, power. So we need to treat them very in a quite paternalizing way. That's a danger, and also I fully agree that we should not do something specifically for women, also to avoid this stigmatization. And the second thing for me that undermines the whole approach is inconsistency. So if we tell the world that we are the organization that supports women, and then if you have a child and you come back after a year or something and your workplace is gone and there is no one who help you to reintegrate into the new world, then it's inconsistent, and it's even worse than not doing anything.
Okay, Thank you very much. So I think we've heard some pretty strong messages, as we've mentioned earlier. This is critical. Getting your human capital right is the way your companies will survive and prosper. If they don't, they will fail. So take on board some of the messages, some of the advice, the lessons learned, and the pitfalls. And I'll just say, we've got 2 minutes left. Any questions?
To share on that one. I think that's an excellent point, and that makes maybe another lesson learned. I think to get it, accepted on the organization or put on the agenda, it's important to get senior management support. But at the end of the day, it's about the experience of each individual at work, and it's not because your CEO says diversity is important and you spread all the right messages that people feel that. What I've seen specifically around inclusion, I found that on the diversity topic itself, it's not always easy to, how should I put it? It's hard not to give it a top down because it's a lot about creating awareness, sharing what you're doing, why you're doing it, etc. On the inclusion part, on the other hand, I think everybody in the organization has a key role to play, because whether you feel included or not is determined by the people you see around you, by the relationship with your manager. And what I like is I see a lot of people who've stepped up in the organization coming to me to say, look, we like what the company is doing around diversity and inclusion, but we want to do something within our own area. And for example, in our financial division, we have a couple of young and excited people who said, this inclusion thing, we get it, and we want to do something in our division because we don't think everybody really gets what it means. So they made their own video, just filming their colleagues and making a fun, visual around first they coming in grey garbage bags into the office, and then this is what our office looks like now, and then this is what we've turned it into just by being curious and having conversations, etc. And that's been, once they published that on our social media intranet, it's gone viral. I've never had so much, talk and conversation about diversity. None of our senior managers could ever have gotten that kind of attention that what these guys and girls brought to the table. So that's an excellent point. You need both.
Nice. Thank you very much. Maciej, last point?
Yes.
From you?
Excellent question. The way I had exactly the same problem. The messages were coming top down, but how do I engage the people on the ground, actually, where we have a fairly large and diverse workforce. So the way we addressed it at my organization is that we created certain work groups where people simply sign up for it, whoever is interested in a topic, and they started debating what's working, what's not. And one of the work groups is diversity and inclusion. And people started asking, all right, Maciej, but show me the data, how does it look for risk in Poland? So they started analyzing, and we hire enough women. There are enough women when it comes to the first corporate titles. And they analyzed the data by themselves and found that the step which is lacking in our organization is the inclusiveness of disabled people. And they started analyzing it and coming up with certain initiatives and engaging also other organizations within Credit Suisse in order to start doing something about it. And those people, once they have a program, once they have the ideas, they start engaging their colleagues all around them. They always get, during my town halls, 15 minutes to present the initiatives, what they managed to achieve within the last quarter and what's coming until the end of the year. So they are the ones driving it and actually living the messages and spreading the messages most effectively.
Great, thank you very much.
Linking back to Karolina's point, consistency is super important there, because you need to treasure and cherish that energy coming up. If then they get the message like, well, this is a nice thing to do, but outside of your hours, please first deliver your business objectives, then you lose all of that. So it's key to show that also, to bring that up and show to other people that these things help you also in your career.
Excellent. So on that note, we are out of time. I'm sure we could carry on longer. So Karolina, Katrien, Maciej, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.